Welcome back, everyone. We are in Dallas, Texas today, and in the heart of Dallas, Texas today. We've been outside, but now we're right in the middle of downtown. And we are so excited to be talking about innovation from an entrepreneurial perspective, but with a little bit of a twist. We're going to focus a little bit on the benefits of having a diversified workforce. And when I say diversity, I mean at every level. Different types of skills, different backgrounds, different experiences, different ages, different genders. When we bring people who have different ideas to the table, it gives us the opportunity to have the best idea rise to the top, and then the system to be able to optimize it. So that's really where we're going to get to today and talk with our guest and find out from a different perspective how we get there. So if you would, I'll turn it over to you. Tell us who you are and a little bit about yourself and how you got to where you are today.
Terrific. Well, thank you for being in Dallas, Texas today. So my name is Patricia Rodriguez-Christian, and I am a native Texan. I did not move here from another place.
Wow.
So I was born and raised in Texas. I went to school in New Mexico. I have worked in all three sectors, public sector, private sector, and actually both sectors, and I'm an entrepreneur. I have been an entrepreneur twice, this second time for over 25 years. And, one of the things that I love about being an entrepreneur is that more and more over the last 30 years, women entrepreneurs are making a bigger impact on the economy, the U.S. economy, and really the global economy. And so I am super passionate about making sure that there is opportunity for everybody in supply chain and opportunity in whatever it is that they choose to do with their lives.
Yeah. One of the things that I have learned over my years is that women coming into the workplace in droves doesn't just add to the number. It changes the way we think and the way we work together. As a young person, I got married very young and had children very young, and so it never occurred to me that I would have a job. Wow, fascinating to
Yes.
look back at those eyes and think my assumption was always, as soon as I had children, I would never work. My last child, my fourth child, I remember thinking, it would never occur to me not to work.
Right.
And I'm not that old. So you have a span of, 10, 12 years across children, and yet it's changed that dramatically in many ways. And so now we see women coming in droves and with expectation of working, but they come in different ways. What have you seen?
Well, let me tell you a little bit about my experience. I have had a job since I was 14 years old. And truth be told, I was working probably at 10 and 11 as my mother's little assistant. I come from a family of very hardworking immigrant parents. And, we were taught to work, hard, to do what we needed to do to accomplish the goals that we set for ourselves. The beauty about my parents is that they always encouraged us in whatever it was that we wanted to endeavor for our lives. But here's the interesting thing. I never saw myself not working. I guess because both my parents always worked very hard, both, in our home and outside of the home. And so to me, it was always a given that I was always going to work. And so I delayed having my first child until it was almost too late. But luckily, I am very blessed to have a son. And but when you talk about how things have changed, around women and why why they're making an impact in their communities, I think it's because we have finally come to a point where we know that we can be just as impactful as we have traditionally been in the home, that we can do the same thing in the workplace. Mm-hmm. The occurrences over the last couple of decades, more women in the workplace, more women graduating with bachelor's degrees than our male counterparts.
We haven't just caught up, we've surpassed.
Yes, we have
Yeah.
more women achieving advanced degrees. I think all of those things have served to really support what women are wanting to do, not just in corporate America, but in the entrepreneurship space and in public service.
Yeah, I agree. I think we're seeing a changeover in expectation and background. So it's interesting as we all both come from the South.
Yes.
But different backgrounds and experiences. But on the average, it has changed tremendously. And I look to my daughter, and I think they don't even notice. They don't think that they should adjust their schedule for anything in particular. It's we just go. We just plan. We do. We experience.
And I love that attitude about our, young women, and even, many of the young men, not all of them, but many of the young men. And in that, they see young women more as their co-equals.
Yes.
Versus, I'm going to be the one that leads, and you're going to follow, or you will work, for me versus with me. And those are terms that I'm very optimistic about our future. Here in Dallas, in particular, I'm really excited to see the diversity of this area changing, and changing for the better.
How so?
Well, if you take a look at what's happening in investing, in entrepreneurship, there are organizations, large Fortune 500, S&P listed organizations that have recognized that diversity really is the strength of their organization.
Yep.
One of the investment firms here in town recently did a study, and they took a look at the most highly diverse top S&P organizations, and they discovered that those that had women in the boardroom, that had women in the C-suite, and had some diversity all the way around were the most profitable. They were delivering higher shareholder value than those that have the same look in their boardrooms and in the C-suite. So what does this tell us? What this tells us is that when we access the best talent, regardless of where individuals are coming from, what their belief systems are, what they look like, where they were raised, we bring value to the table. And so I'm hopeful that, this trend continues.
I think it will. I mean, if nothing else, it has to, right? I mean, eventually we care less about the way things used to be, or checking a box to keep something in a certain space. Commerce is actually one that pushes it, right? Because like you said, the shareholders are going to say, hey, we've got to get it right. We've got to get it the best. We see the same thing in military, and I'm not going to remember the exact percentage off the top of my head, but the former chief of naval officer, Admiral Richardson, he gave a quote at one of our meetings about how much better the decision making was if there was at least one female on the team.
Absolutely.
And he said, so we're here to win. We're not here to say that there were all men on the team. Diversity matters, right?
Absolutely.
And it was measurable, and that was it for the military. Now it was, this isn't about equality, this is about success. And in our so each month I write a national strategy using government programs and what we have. And for our economic strategy, I make 3 pillars. The last one is compete. And I said, we have to, as a nation, figure out what are our strongest assets. And I said, creativity and diversity.
Absolutely. And, when you talk about creativity and diversity, it reminds me of what's happening in many corporate environments, and really in the public sector as well. And that is around supplier diversity, right? So we've talked about the C-suite. We've talked about the boardroom, and the workforce. So now let's talk about our vendors and suppliers, right? So supplier diversity is proving to be also a strength to our organizations, whether public sector or private sector. And so supplier diversity programs are under the microscope these days because they recognize that when their supply chains involve creativity from their vendors and from their suppliers,
Yeah.
when they give opportunity to those that may not have a gigantic organization that can put out a lot of business development, but they may have, there may be a very small organization that has limited resources, but by God, they are incredibly creative.
Yeah.
And these creative organizations, the creativity in supply chain is coming from people that you've not seen traditionally in supply chain.
Yeah.
So really, diversity encompasses everything, and it strengthens everything that we're doing.
So how do we harness it? How do we, we recognize at the individual company level and maybe even at the industry level, right, per industry. How do we do it at the national level? Because some of that coordination becomes necessary to consider from a policy perspective, from a nation moving forward and being ready for some of the things that happened. Something I learned very strongly at NATO, the assumption is that as we are the lead nation and that we contribute the most money, therefore we are the one that is most important. And what I found was very different. We had a seat at the table and we should be part of the team, but the agility of some of those other nations was really important, and some of the particular points in each of those nations that we didn't necessarily invest in became really important. And that's when I started to realize when we get into global stability, we have to recognize the benefits of all the different nations come together, not just the largest ones. I suspect the same is true for the nation.
Absolutely, and it's true for the nation in a number of ways. You talked about the smaller nations who were much more agile. We can see that play out in supply chain.
Right.
When you have, the multinationals that have been, around for a very long time, it is very difficult for that organization to be agile, to respond quickly, and to innovate quickly. That's how we can begin to do it, across the country. When you talk about, how do we prepare for the future? We need to take into account what's happening in our educational system.
Oh yes. Now you're really in my zone.
Yeah. Oh gosh.
Oh yes.
When so many of our students don't have access to the right resources in order to take standardized tests, when they're not giving the resources so that they can learn the material that they need to learn to be successful on a national basis, not just in their community. This really is a global economy, and as much as we want to bury our heads in the sand and say that I'm going to focus on local only, local is not local anymore.
No.
As much as we want to believe
it's
that it
comfortable.
is. Absolutely. It's easy to say I love my neighborhood and I don't want it to change ever, but there's a bigger, brighter world out there that we can embrace.
We can. We're afraid.
Well, and as I said earlier, unfortunately, fear is grounded in a lack of understanding.
Yep.
Lack of understanding of different people, different points of view, different ways of thinking, different ways of addressing an issue.
Now, you worked on some of this inside the government many years ago.
I did many years ago, and I won't tell you how many.
But tell us how you tried to combat some of that, right? Because that's what it is how do we undo what we know is kind of the problem?
Sure. So traditionally at the federal level, this was a couple of decades ago, and everybody looked like everybody else in federal government. And so I worked on a really incredible program that aimed to introduce diversity at the federal level. And so how did we do it? We created this program that built internships so that federal agencies could access new, bright, intelligent talent that had a different view, a different perspective, a different way of problem solving. Because when you're in an organization for a very long time, you get very tunnel visioned about how you're going to address and attack an issue, right?
That's a lot of single flavor Kool-Aid.
Absolutely. And so we built this program. We brought in interns from very diverse backgrounds, and we purposely did that so that we recognized that we needed to build the future of federal government so that it looked like the future of this nation.
Yeah.
And so it was an incredible pilot that was piloted, as I said, a couple decades ago. And I'm incredibly proud to say that it lives. It still lives. The program is still there, and it lives across federal government. And here again, it's about not about doing this for this particular ethnic group or for this racial group. It really is about identifying the best talent to lead this nation.
Yep. Yes, and you illustrate one of the points it's really hard for people to understand. What do we spend our federal dollars on? Right? When we hear someone on stage speaking, they say, I'm going to put money towards the environment of $1 billion this direction, or I'm going to give teachers a raise in this direction. And it leaves a lot of Americans asking the question, okay, well, where'd the rest of it go? And where the rest of it goes is into what I would call an enabling program, what you just described.
Absolutely.
And so to add to your story, which I didn't share with you earlier, they've now expanded into several more internship projects, one of which I really love is virtual. The reason I love it is because it allows somebody to not have to move or leave their job, but still be able to participate and learn the insides of government and work on a project across one of, I think it's like 26 agencies, don't quote me on that, I have to look it up exactly. So they've recognized that they also can come to you and be able to invite people in and get them to help solve the problems. And unfortunately, I don't think most people know these programs exist.
And there again, it's a lack of resources, right? So there are these incredible programs that are available to students, to mid-career professionals, or to professionals who are really looking to do a pivot, a complete 180. We're aging. Our population is aging, but healthcare is getting better and better. Which, what does that mean? That means that we're going to live longer, right?
Yes.
So many of
with
us,
more people,
yes, many of us will end up in completely different second careers.
Yep.
So the ability to work virtually, that's what's driving innovation, and it would be sad to see so much knowledge walk out the door, right?
Yep.
When people retire, and it's wonderful that there's innovation in government.
Yes, we actually have 179 innovation groups inside the government right now.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. That surprises me.
Yep. I went and tracked them all down, and we looked at what all of them were doing. They cover all departments and most agencies, and they are not coordinated, so there is more work to be done.
Sure.
But they have been started, they are moving, they are making changes, and that's what's pretty exciting. It's really exciting. So we're figuring it out. We're just moving a little slower than maybe we'd like to. So,
well, we always want to hurry up and get it done, and unfortunately, there's always a lot of boxes you have to check, and a lot of things that have to happen in order for things to move forward in government.
Yeah.
Which is why I think entrepreneurship is driving a lot of change.
Yes.
The private sector drives a lot of change. Although I know that as this country matures, some of our challenges are not in our traditional spaces. It's unfortunate to see so many industries that are being affected. But at the same time, we have to look to the opportunities on the horizon.
Yeah.
And they're not. Unfortunately, they're not in so much in manufacturing, although we would love for it to be in manufacturing. But if we don't prepare, this next generation to drive some of that innovation that is largely tied to cyber, to media, software, we're going to find ourselves way behind. The days of teaching the old-fashioned way it just isn't enough anymore.
No, absolutely. Well, I'm pleased to say the government is taking hold on that because the military has started to see a decline in eligibility rates. So they've said we're changing the system, and so we got the Pentagon to fund the redesign of the U.S. education system to be focused on the areas you just described.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear that. Oh
there's some good stuff.
I've had these thoughts in my head for a long time.
Oh, I'm so, yeah. We, and that's kind of what I said to my boss. I said, sir, we have a problem? And he goes, yeah, okay, what's our problem? And I said, but hear me out. I really don't want to do any more research, and I really don't want to reinvent the wheel. So he was like, okay, I'm listening. I said, well, best I can tell, we've got experts in tires, and we've got experts in steering wheels, and we've got experts in pistons. But we don't have a blueprint for the car. And without that, we lose the entire capability of transportation. And he goes, yes. I said, okay, well, that only took me 3 minutes. I have 57 more minutes to fill. What else can I ask for? But no, it was pretty funny. But that is really how we got to it, because the military is one of those that says immediately, I need you to perform. I don't need you just to pass the test. So we've got to fix all of this in order to put young people out ready for life, ready for training, ready for work.
Right. They have to be, and this is kind of a cliche, they have to be able to do more than, fix an airplane engine.
Right.
They need to know how to program the software that's going to run that engine,
Exactly. Well, thank you so much for joining us. This was awesome.
You're welcome.
I can talk to you all day. This is exciting. It's nice to see it all come full circle. Thank you so much.
Thank you so
everyone.
much, JJ.